Hi and welcome to DevOpsCon. I'm here with Helen Beal. Hi, Helen.
Hi.
How was your session? Or better said, sessions?
They were both great, thank you. So the first one I did the correlations between DevOps and holacracy, and I've just come off stage having done how DevOps propagates through an organisation.
So I have a question. Let's say that a company decides to do DevOps, although whatever that means for them. What is the first step? What should they implement first?
Well, we wouldn't actually recommend implementing anything first. What we would recommend doing first is baselining their current state. So there's lots of maturity matrices and lots of people like us out there that can help people do that. So we would recommend some kind of assessment that should have three goals. The first, to baseline the current state. The second, to articulate the desired future state. And the third, to define the roadmap between those two states. So that's where we'd always recommend starting. And trying to make that a sprint project. So the transformation itself, don't fall into the waterfall trap again of doing it in steps, but actually think of it about, if you like, injecting iterability into your capability as an organisation.
I see. And how should the change happen? Bottom up, top down, both, neither?
Yeah, a bit of both. So as I just kind of covered in my presentation, DevOps is a very kind of grassroots movement, so it is quite bottom up, but actually most organisations in the world today have some kind of hierarchical organisational structure where layers of authority and power exist, so getting executive support to make change happen is really important.
And are there perhaps any tools that we can use that the company can use to make sure they don't make mistakes or when
so there's lots of kind of maturity matrices out there which basically kind of if you like, a pattern for best practice. So we have lots that we can use, there's lots available out there. So that's a tool from a kind of organisational pattern perspective. There are some quite specific automation tools that we think can help early. So we would normally do things like recommend people process tools, but there are some tools like particular digital performance management, so tools like Dynatrace or AppDynamics, that if you use them you can uncover lots of kind of endemic problems in your applications without sending yourselves down a path that you can't return from. So there's a couple of tools we'd recommend. Another tool, if you like, is the Phoenix Project game that we have, so it's serious play. It's based on the book by Gene Kim and George Spafford and Kevin Beer, and developed in partnership with our Gaming Works, who are a very specialist gaming development partner based in Amsterdam. And you basically get 12 people in a room and they all take a role from the book and they play a few rounds and they have to influence the share price and the revenue coming into Parts Unlimited, which is the company out of the book. So it's a fun way of having experiential learning, basically.
Sounds exciting. But how can we make sure that we don't create yet another silo? Because this is what we want to prevent, right?
Yeah, so the most common pattern for creating another silo is to create a DevOps team, which is okay as long as people consider that that's one step to an evolution where DevOps is accepted by the whole company. Because DevOps isn't just one person's job, it is everybody's job in that organisation, and DevOps needs to be seen as an evolutionary transformational journey where every human in that organisation understands and acts on the underlying principles.
And how can we make the cultural changes stick? Is there a way or more?
It's tough. I think it needs to be understood from the start that changing behaviours takes time. So if you think about things like muscle memory, you have to repeat the same thing over and over before it becomes kind of ingrained or a habit in everything that we do. So a typical kind of problem use case that we see is people trying to adopt Agile, and Scrum is often said to be easy to learn but difficult to master. So what people tend to do with Agile is go, right, we're going to do Agile transformation, we're going to get some product owners, we're going to get some Scrum masters, we're going to write a product backlog, we're going to get some sprint backlogs and run some sprints. And they might get a bit of coaching towards the start, but it's very easy to fall back into waterfall ways or forget to do daily stand-ups. There were some people that came to talk to me yesterday about the kind of hiccups that their Agile transformation was going through, and I asked them about daily stand-ups and they just weren't doing them, and they're a really essential part of the discipline of doing Agile and doing Scrum.
I see. Well, everybody has battle scars, but I would love to hear more about smart failures. What are they and how can we deal with them? What can we learn from them?
Yeah, so let's just go back a couple of steps. I mentioned things like where do we start with DevOps and doing things like baselining of current state. When we do that, one of the things we do is baseline people's current cultural states. We actually quantify their maturity from a cultural perspective, and one of the questions that we ask people is how they feel about failure. And most people are quite scared of failure, but in DevOps we take a different principle that we must embrace failure, because embracing failure proves that we're learning and we're experimenting and willing to try new things. Some organisations that we work with, notably Lego, have an annual prize that they give to the worst project. So it's actually celebrating the fact that people tried to do something that just went really badly, but at least they tried, and that's the really important thing. So when we talk about all of that, it's like, obviously there's a lot of fear in organisations. They have critical systems. All systems pretty much these days are critical to organisations. So we don't want to introduce failure for failure's sake, because that could cost business a lot of money, a load of reputation. Some businesses have had failures that have nearly cost them their entire livelihoods in the past. So whilst we want to encourage a culture where people have experimentation and aren't afraid to fail, we also need to create systems around them that means that they are protected from failure as much as they can. So these could be different things. So it could be an early warning system. So I mentioned digital performance management earlier. So things like Dynatrace can give people preemptive warning that something is coming and an application is failing. So it gives them a chance to either move to a load balancer if it isn't automated, or another example of a way to do smart failure is to have an automated deployment system where you can immediately redeploy the last known good state and therefore get yourself out of trouble. Another way of doing smart failure, and we quite often refer to it as fast failure or safe failure as well, or fail safe. Another way of doing it is actually to test yourself, so using things like Chaos Monkey to break things purposefully, to practice what will happen if there is a disaster of some description.
Sounds great. Well, it's good to have a safety net, right? And one final question, it's a bit general, but how can we become DevOps enablers? Is it a fail-proof way?
So it's very promotional actually, but we're partners with the DevOps Institute at Range 4. I'm actually on the board of regents at DevOps Institute, and we deliver their courses, and they do have a DevOps Foundation course, which is a really good way of getting certified early in how to do DevOps and then evangelising that through.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much.